guess what? You're changing the way you did things, so we have to send the correct notice out. And we could have done that right from the beginning if he was there. If we also get the city business done, maybe the staff could go, we're not paying all this over.
Can I jump in? We've gotten off track. This meeting isn't about deciding this issue. We need to do this some other time.
We're allowed to discuss it today.
We can do that, but we've got bigger fish to fry, I think.
Well, I
And it's
think-
not on the agenda.
It's the sort of thing that would require a decision to make any changes about. I think it's perfectly fine to share some views about it. I'd be surprised if any of us had very different views, but agreed, you can't reach a consensus or a decision or anything like
This is
that.
just a discussion.
Open conversation.
We've got bigger fish to fry.
So we've interrupted that conversation. Before we got too far from what we were discussing prior. So I'm not changing the topic. Something I wanted to talk about today, I think it's the right forum. The forum is to talk about productivity and working functionality of council, staff, of the interaction between the two. So you have council to council, council to staff, staff to council. And Lou kind of bravely brought it to a pretty fine point of an inherent skepticism being directed toward, and I'm being broad and general here, so allow me the flexibility in doing that. Very skeptical inherently with staff, management, that sort of thing. And an aura or a culture of taking one misstep, miswording, miscue, and that breeding something very unhealthy. And it's okay for members of the public to come display their discourse and displeasure and frustration. Gosh, we need it, we want it, right? And if a member of council thinks that a member of staff is not doing their job, let's deal with that. If we think that there's an inherent issue in the process, let's deal with that. But let's not become a body that is taking opportunities to take shots at the other, undermine productivity, try and illustrate an issue where somebody's going to, take the wrong step, something like that. And when I think teamwork, that's what I'm thinking of. Not being able to challenge, because I love that word, right? Challenge us to do better. It's not that nothing's good enough. It's that we're challenging you to bring us something different, something new, something more, right? And that's okay. We expect the same of ourselves from our constituents and from staff alike. And so just what I've experienced and picked up is growing is an underlying skepticism of what is staff up to, or distrust, right? Because we know that there's an outspoken, it's not new, but there's a more outspoken and growing noise to support the distrust of what government as a whole is doing in the city. What are we up to? How did that decision get made? Where did that come from? I don't want to perpetuate that at our council meetings and in our interactions with staff. Frankly, if that exists, let's address it.
I wholeheartedly agree that that's been my perception as well. And I think the way we address it, as I mentioned to Andy earlier, is over-communicate rather than under-communicate. Let the public know what's going on, let them know what we're working about, Let me build on your comment for a second in a slightly different way. I've begun to understand that we have these little subgroups of council and the mayor and so forth and staff working on things. I don't know if that's ever happened before. I don't know if that's new. My understanding that it is happening is new. And I feel left out. I feel like there's an acceptable clique that gets to do that, and I'm not included because I disagree. Because this or because that or because I'm difficult. I truly resent that. And I resent having to find out about it through back channels. So I want to put that on the table as well. And to that degree, we are doing things in private, in behind closed doors. That is happening. And so the fact that the public is calling us on that, I welcome that. Sunshine's a good thing. And I'm sorry we're in this situation, and I'm working to try to change that so that we work in the sunshine.
Aside from wearing a GoPro and a microphone, somebody has to be the first to know. Somebody, unfortunately, has to be the last to know. Nobody likes to be the last to know, but sometimes things are a building work in progress and have to develop to a certain point that they're presented to council, they're presented to staff, they're presented to each other, that sort of thing. Yeah, maybe that process could be done better. But I guess when you're talking about that everything in sunshine, when you think about actually functioning, which conversations are okay to have in an email between me and another staff member, or you and another council member, and which ones need to CC the News Journal so that everybody knows?
At least let us know. We're supposed to be a team. Let us know when there's a subgroup working on noise. I found out about that, just quite casually by accident. I'm irritated about it. When there's a subgroup working on this or on that or the other thing. You all saw that I saw a project that's floating its way in front of planning and development. We all should know about that. Because it's going to affect all of us. The News Journal doesn't necessarily need to be involved. If we're going to be a team, we all need to be involved. We at least need to have the opportunity to give our input during the development so that it doesn't come to council as a yes/no by the time we finally find out.
I will, to the point specifically on development, another thing that is council's difficulty, but also responsibility is, and Maureen, you can tell me if I'm speaking out of turn, but if a plan's submitted, it's council's responsibility to impartially review the plans in front of them. So there has to be caution with how much you guys are having input or, from a more negative perspective, interfering with the development of these plans before they're submitted, just because when it comes before you, you need to be an impartial body reviewing it. Because that's going to set us up for legal problems later if you're not considered an impartial body.
Not the best example. For my part. Yeah. But the other subgroups, I'll stick with that as an example.
I think one way to change that, and the council has done in the past, and I did this with the solar project. So I brought it to council and said, we have this opportunity, I'd like to pursue this, I'd like to work with staff on it. Is council okay with me proceeding as a single member to discuss because there were a lot of issues you had to get through. I mean, things could die so fast that being involved in all the details at that point in time, it just made it go nowhere. So, but, you know, when we have, and I think with the noise ordinance, I thought we had discussed at the table that we were going to do this. Maybe we hadn't said specifically who was going to do it, but I think we need to evolve that some more. It says, I'd like council's permission, know what's going on, and I would like to pursue this.
Yeah, and that's exactly the type of thing. And when you said that, we all have those of us that were involved at the time had the opportunity to sign on and say, could I join you? You know, the noise thing, there's a scheduled meeting.
It's an educational meeting to help.
Not offensive. We can change how council approaches things. All we have to do is, we brought it to the table, we say, who wants to be involved? You gotta be careful about how large that involvement is, because then it becomes a subcommittee which is subject to all sorts of other rules. So, but, so you just brought up one with the council. The council needs to go forward, bring ideas to the table, and ask who wants to be involved. Right?
That's all. Thanks. Thanks for clarifying.
And we've done it in the past. So it's, every council evolves in how they do business. I was quite lucky when I came in, lots of experience, and things were fairly, they understood how I could ask questions, and I could come up to speed. This is a much less experienced council, and we're still evolving how we do business at the table and how we move forward. Plus, we have a lot of things that have been put on our plate.
So we're getting, at least from the original schedule, close to basic time we had sort of set for ourselves here. Certainly don't want to, in any shape or form, close that door yet. We want to be sure that there isn't something. I mean, the reality is we could go on for 5 more hours, but at some point, I think, we'd have a case of diminishing returns for effectiveness. That said, let me ask, is there something that someone wants to say or bring up that you didn't get a chance to do so this morning? From the staff's viewpoint, several of whom have spoken already, is there anything that one of you wanted to say that wasn't brought up?
Don't mind.
Oh, either way,
Go ahead.
sing out.
I was just gonna say that I think something that gets lost sometimes with council and with staff and with the public is we all live here, well, I shouldn't say we all, but most of us live here too. We love this city. We do this, I can speak for myself, and I think I can speak for hopefully most of the people at this table in saying, we all want to have a wonderful, productive, vibrant city that, everybody wants to live in. And I think that, if maybe we can start at that point and say, we all want a better Newark. We may just sometimes have different ways of getting there, that we could maybe have better communication between everyone. Because I think and not to sound too, hearts and flowers here, but, I work with members of council, and I work with Carol every day. And, I can see how much all of them care about this city. And I know that are equally passionate people in the audience who also care about this city. And we want to make sure we can facilitate a relationship between council, between staff, and between the public to make sure that all voices are being heard and that we can, come together at least around that issue. That we all want a better Newark, and we want Newark to be a place that we all love to live. So.
Yeah, I had something, I don't want to,
Right on the
try
floor.
not to make this, yeah, rain on the flower, whatever.
Sorry.
It's a little specific, but I think it will apply to other projects. When we were considering the parking issue with the land swap, forget the issue, but when, there was a couple press releases during the week from the city, and to me, it felt like the city had very strong opinions in one direction before we had the ability to consider what was in the agreement and that sort of information that is usually provided to council. So I felt some additional pressure there that we don't normally get with other items on the agenda. So I think we need to talk about how we do press releases in the city. And I think that'd be something good for all of us to talk about, not necessarily here and now trying to solve it, but I just want to get it on a list of issues to deal with.
100% support that.
And as a new council member, I felt a lot of pressure because I went back 7 years into history, tried to understand the issue from the basic numbers, and I got our results from our studies of parking, you know, and so I wanted to ask some of those questions because I promised my constituents I'd at least ask the hard questions. And to do that in that short time, despite the many hours I put in, I didn't necessarily go to every staff member, but I did do a lot of research. There's a lot on our website, pull up pages and pages of information. I did get some information from Carol. I want to at least do our due diligence to look as if we consider the issue fully, especially if you didn't. You know, I mean, I've never thought about the parking issue before. I didn't know about the land swap before that week, you know, so it's just something that bothered me, and I wanted to make sure to bring that up. Told you that.
I don't think that rains on the bridge.
I think it's entirely fair. That was, you know, council had not made that decision, and that's an example of where we are and the challenge we have moving forward in, you know, putting the decision authority where it belongs, and including the public.
The press release can come out, council has approved it. Boom.
Yeah.
And it lights.
Absolutely.
It's fine.
Yep.
We've talked, essentially everything we've talked about is communication, trust, effectiveness, and that sort of thing. I've pretty much been stomping my feet like a toddler at the municipal building since I was elected, literally within hours of, we need to do a better job. And there's easy implementable ways to do that. Communicating with one another, communicating with constituents, and frankly, giving the power to communicate into the city from constituents, and for that to be transparent and all that stuff. So I stomped my feet again the end of last year, the beginning of this year, and Carol spoke to it. Hopefully soon. We should see some agenda items that are going to give us the opportunity to really address and put to a priority attention all of that stuff. And so I've been reserving a lot of my continued commentary or, you know, hodgepodge, ad hoc correction solution recommendations for that. Let's see what they bring us first and how that discussion goes, and frankly, I rely on the rest of you to, you know, kind of chime in on that, and then constituents and other folks that have expertise in that sort of thing. But I bring that up just to say that if all of council was not aware, please be aware. This is something I'm passionate about. I think it's going to be so helpful and productive for everything we do, and just the environment that we all live in. Elected, not elected, staff, that sort of thing.
Councilman, what are you talking about?
Thank you, Stuart.
I'm just gonna let you finish.
Okay. Poor communication.
There's something coming.
Well,
Well, because
where he's going.
it's broad. I essentially asked Carol and Andy to, I said we need a complete overhaul on the way we do business in terms of communication with one another, with with the outside world, marketing,
That's what
who we are,
that's
what we do.
need to know.
So the thing is it's so broad right now,
Yeah.
right? Because there's so many things that need attention. And so I just asked them to bring that to the table and something that we can, as council members, chew on. Because we've all talked about it so many times, it's been the 90% of what we talk about today.
It's also one of my goals that you all gave me.
Timeframe.
I have not received it, it's kind of one of those, it should be coming up soon, I think they're trying to get some things in line, so, one of the other things that's come up several times today is, having more clear expectations, clarity on where things are in process, and timeline expectations and that sort of thing, yeah. So I don't know, can't think.
I just want to add some more hearts and flowers. I really love living in this city, and I've talked to so many staff members, and I think they do an outstanding job for the city. And we all do need to improve our communications. The one thing we're always going to be fighting. We've got the best parks department that I believe in the state. We've got one of the best police departments in the state, if not the best one, keeping crime down. We're able to self-manage each other. We can go get a building permit with Steve Wilson, and makes it as smooth as possible to let it happen. And immediate, get a phone call, they're out within 24 to 48 hours. So we have a lot of great things going for us. We just need to make slight improvements on communication and hopefully get it out there that everyone's more happy and satisfied. So there's my heart's content.
The communication issue is not new, not new. It goes back long time. But we can do better.
Well, I think the important thing is we're willing to do better. That's step one. Well, I think all this generally saying in these U-shaped tables today are, I genuinely believe, we're all interested in doing better. And I think that's can oftentimes be the worst hurdle to get over. And I certainly believe that we'll all work on it and bring some things to the table to help us do that better as well.
Is there direction, consensus, and what, without input, on getting the communication improvement in terms of reports? I'll come back to detail. So is there, since you're running the meeting, you feel like there has been direction, council looking for improvements on it?
Well, I think I heard it discussed just a little bit ago that this is, I'll ask the question, say it and ask it all at the same time. But I think I suggested to you that Carol prepare a format or work on a format for all of the department head reports that's uniform. Okay? Whatever that format is, the next time you see it, at the next meeting, if you like it, say you like it. If you don't like it, you want it to be changed somehow, change somehow. One of you, several of you like attention to get to more detail than others don't. Okay? But I think the most important part is a format that's readable. You have a lot of things on your plate and a lot of time that you're already spending. Make it easy to read, easy to understand. Get right to, I would always say, the bigger issues, the true governance issues. Not, I did 6 potholes and I spoke with 7 constituents. Put that in, because some of you do like that detail. That's wonderful. But I think more importantly, to have all the bigger items, important items, up front. In terms of other forms of communication, it's an art and a science that you'll never master. The reality is work at it, and as I think we've all said, you're willing to work at it. You're going to have bumps in the road. It's going to happen. Be honest with each other. Remember, when it comes to management, and particularly when it comes to governance, which is more than just management, the only people who aren't making mistakes are people who aren't trying. It's not black and white. If we're black and white, we live in a perfect world. And remember, what you're doing here for this community is, as Mark said early on, very much affecting the quality of life for the people who live, work, and play here. That's what you do. You do it in many, many different ways. So you're going to have bumps in the road. You're going to have mistakes. Staff's going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. It's going to happen. Be honest with each other. Talk about it. rather than hold it in or something, if staff presents a report that doesn't meet your need, for whatever reason, talk about it, let them know. Okay, so that it becomes a dynamic process, and it becomes an issue where you're talking to one another, correcting it, trying to get it right. Recognizing that there's going to be bumps, and recognizing that it's an imperfect science. That's what I think. And it is what I thought, it's what I heard from, the truth is here, what you've all talked about, while it's in more detail, it is not significantly different than you all told me when I met with you and when I met with staff. It's not significantly different. And I really made that last slide I had in the PowerPoint, really wasn't much of a reach for me. And I didn't think any of you were going to greatly disagree with me because it's what you told me. So, my takeaway for you is, think about down the road, preparing a strategic plan. A strategic plan, if done correctly, does a number of things. First of all, it provides you with a written plan, which is always dynamic, by the way. It can change, you might want to change it the month after you do it. But it prepares a prioritized list of goals that you want to work on. It then provides a blueprint, a guideline, not only for you, but for staff, the people who are working here operationally day to day. If done correctly, the strategic plan not only presents a list of prioritized goals, and some of them are very, very specific, reconstruct Park Place, or, correct the drainage system in this neighborhood, or something. And others are going to be improved communication. Oh, okay, well, there's a dynamic one. We just got done spending X number of hours talking about it. So some are very specific, some are, whatever, okay? And then you prioritize them. Not necessarily what's number 1 and 2, but what are the top 5 or top 10, and the next 10, okay? And then you identify who are the players who are responsible for achieving each of those goals. So each goal has a person or persons who are the more key players in achieving of that individual goal. And then the bottom piece becomes the barometer. That is, how do we measure on this particular goal that we've met it? Some are simple. If it's reconstructing Park Place, you either reconstructed it or you didn't. That's an easy barometer. If it's increased our level of communication, that's going to be a harder one to establish a barometer. I'm picking two complete opposites. Many are much, much more in the middle. So think about down the road preparing a strategic plan. And I'll tell you, in addition to the plan, which by the way you then need to revisit in 6 months or a year, because remember, no sooner will you set this plan, something's going to happen that you had no clue was coming, that alters your plan. So it's not a black and white document. It's a living, breathable guideline that you follow. But what this preparation of strategic plan also does, becomes a great bonding opportunity for all of you. Just like you've done this morning. To sit down and talk about what you think the prioritized goals are for your community and how you want to get there. And again, as you go through these, you're going to agree to disagree. Some things are more important to several of you than they are to others. It's good. It's great. That's what makes your organization great, because you have diversity of opinion, and you recognize and you accept diversity of view. But in the end, it's great to know where each guy comes from, each person, each member of council comes from. And your staff should be a part of this, and they're hearing your deliberations. And it's just like a win-win-win situation in many different ways. That was much more long-winded than it needed. It is. Okay. So, are we good now? Everyone's input here? Yeah. Okay. So, what we'd like to do now is to certainly welcome any public input, any public comment. I had proposed to the board several weeks ago when I sort of laid out the general ground rules here that we really wouldn't impose a time limit. That's what I proposed. Okay? What I would ask, just of all of you, to be reasonable. I mean, we certainly are interested in what you want to say. We ask you to be reasonable. in terms of the length of your time, try not to be repetitive. I don't think it's necessary for anyone to come up here. We have no mic, we have no stand. Of course, acoustics here are what they are. So basically, and everyone will get a chance to speak. I don't think the order is important, at least I don't think.
You
So,
just need to state their name.
yeah, that's fine. So just raise your hand, I'll recognize you.